marketing. And strangely enough, it's quiet in the universe. It's just us three. I mean, literally, right now, nobody knows we're around.
Quality over quantity.
If
That's
one
right.
of us fell, we wouldn't make a sound.
Right, but our wives would still say we're wrong.
Yeah. I know the truth.
Yes. With
I-
me
I-
Go ahead, Mr. Ben.
I was thinking, Laura, we might start this with a little dad joke. Just to lighten the mood, because it's everyone's in lockdown.
What's
And
lockdown?
a lockdown is where you can't go anywhere and do anything. Ed.
Oh, I live in America, in Florida.
Land of the free,
America
home of the
in
brave.
Florida.
It is my constitutional right.
Universal City Walk and Disney Springs is open. 2.5 hour wait for restaurants on the opening day of Universal City Walk.
2.5 hour
Double dip, here we come.
Yeah.
Now, see, this is the trick. It's hot and sunny here.
Oh, well, that's not a breeding ground for
you should have just said that.
aging and disease, is it?
No.
I
mean, maybe the hot, like tropical diseases like malaria and stuff like that, but not
the flu.
not these
serious
flu things.
No.
Yeah.
These namby-pamby Chinese bread,
Allegedly, Tris. Allegedly.
So let's hear this dad joke.
Not a constant Trump.
And then I actually have something fun to share, and I want to share it before either Stuart or Tim come on.
Okay. Why don't you share it now? Because my dad joke at the moment is definitely passed for my off-the-cuff dad joke.
So this is actually a fun realization I had this morning. So Stuart is using Flip2. Tim made it on. Okay. So Stuart is using Flip2 for the first time for his own use. The company Fuel Travel happens to own MyrtleBeach.com, which is a consumer-facing site. And to help out the Myrtle Beach area, he struck a deal with the DMO for Myrtle Beach that they would run a Flip2 campaign that directs the traffic to the Myrtle Beach market to benefit the market. And so Stuart is quickly moving to take the top spot of most successful Flip2 campaign ever run. And since I knew that was happening, I wanted to look today to see historically who has run the most successful Flip2 campaign, and it's none other than Tim Peter.
What? We have got, I feel a wager coming on here.
So Tim Peter, now Tim still sounds a bit more impressive because Tim Peter took a 19 room mansion and proceeded to run a campaign that got over 1,400 submissions, which resulted in 1,346 of those submissions becoming active storytellers who shared their stories just shy of 26,000 times to an audience of 2.83 million friends and family, which resulted in over 26,000 of those friends and family claiming an offer for a future stay at this 19-room property. By far, the golden standard of what you can do with the Flip2 platform. However,
Tim, do you have a really big family? Can I just ask?
First of all, it's very nice of Ed to give me credit, but to be entirely fair, the marketing director at the property at the Wentworth Mansion was the person who came up with the original idea, and I said we should use Flip2 to execute this. And what they did that was really extraordinary, and I do think there's a lesson here for coronavirus, right, for COVID-19. Because what they did was it happened to be the Emerald anniversary of the property. It happened to be I believe that's the 25th. I should know this off the top of my head. We've been celebrating a couple of different, they own 4 properties. We've been celebrating anniversaries at each of them over the last couple of years. So I can't quite recall which one was which. Including the 150th anniversary of the property as a building for the John Rutledge House Inn. But nonetheless, what they did specifically was they partnered with quite a few other businesses in the destination. A jeweler who provided an emerald ring, a clothier who helped outfit people with outfits. But I mean, they put together a really great contest for what you could win, and there were prizes along the way and things along those lines. But what was just really well done about it, and we all brainstormed this, but I want to give credit where due to the marketing director for the original idea, was just really promote the hell out of the destination and all of the cool things that you could do there in honor of their Emerald anniversary. And so it was something that worked really well, as Ed is pointing out, and that I think you're going to need to do a lot of as we come out of this situation of promote the destination, find those retailers. I don't know if anybody saw the April retail numbers that came out today. April retail was down 16%, 17%, which is a record ever for decline in retail sales, doubling the record of an 8% decline that had occurred in March. So you're going to have other, businesses in town who are hurting from this. You're going to have other businesses who need help too. And these kinds of ideas are great ways to sell the overall destination and get folks who are like, look, we'd love to drive some foot traffic. How can we do that? And like I say, this turned out to be a really positive thing across the board, not just for the property, though very much for the property, but also for, their friends and family around town. So
that was the best award acceptance speech I've ever heard. Except you didn't thank your mum. You didn't thank your mum.
I was about to start playing the music to get him off.
Let's see Stuart's approach. So Stuart, through myrtlebeach.com, has been running a campaign that is currently at 1,289 submissions. So he's quickly catching up on Tim. Now, granted, his campaign is not fully done. So those campaign results that I gave you for Tim were from a full 90-day campaign. Stuart is you've got a month and a half left in your campaign.
We're about halfway through, yeah.
You're about halfway through, and you're right there you're just shy by a couple of hundred submissions on total submissions. Now you got a long way to go on shares.
I don't think we'll catch the shares because for a couple of reasons. One, I don't think we're going to put that much effort into it. But two, we don't have the prize collaboration that you had. I think that was something very aspirational.
A really smart tip that Tim's example had is they started around mid-campaign Facebook live streaming, basically a discussion about where the campaign's at, started promoting that at the end of the campaign. They would announce the winner live from their rooftop. And each of those videos got over 3,000 views. It grew their social audience substantially because all these participants started following them on Facebook. And so they did quite a bit.
So we're shifting gears into that mode now. So what Ed didn't realize about me is I'm probably one of the most competitive people in the world. If you give me a goal or tell me that someone's beating me, I will bend over backwards and inconvenience myself.
Which is funny
to do that,
because
right?
all it started with is I was congratulating.
Is now we're going to do the emerald and a half, baby.
So I had pinged Stuart because probably 2 weeks into the campaign, it quickly moved into the second most successful COVID time campaign behind one of our power users, which is a company called Westgate Resorts. Their social engagement team is top notch, amazing, and I was more just impressed that Stuart, although he has worked alongside Flip2 for his partners, use Fuel, has never run his own campaign. So I was like, Stuart, this is super impressive. Your very first time using Flip2, and you're right up there in my most powerful of users. And I'm thinking I'm congratulating him. Instead, I'm basically ruining his life for the next few months because I start getting text messages in the morning. Hey, did you see how many we got? Are we still in second place? And so this morning he passed Westgate, who is running their campaign right now is so awesome because it's only timeshare owners talking about their favorite part about owning timeshare. Which, I mean, when you think about the fact that they have over 1,000 of them doing that, reaching over 1 million people with the message of, I feel good about what timeshare has meant to me. Like,
very valuable.
It's an amazing campaign, but Stuart finally passed them in whole numbers. So then that made me think, wow, so Stuart's got to be approaching the most successful campaign ever. So I pinged my team and said, hey, I need to know who had the most successful campaign ever. And lo and behold, it's Tim Peter, who was also using the platform for the first time on that campaign. And so that's when I realized that, Lauren, there's a lot of pressure on you because Lauren's about to launch his first real campaign where he is running Flip2, and he's got a paid budget on his. And now your bar is really high, Lauren.
I would put money on Lauren figuring out a way to game the system or work the system really well. Now, I do want to say a couple of things. So, one, you're giving me the credit. It is not me at all. It is Cassidy who heads up our MotorBeach.com team. And the real secret to her success is the fact that she's been working for a long time building up a really engaged audience. We spent no money promoting this whatsoever. We've done no third-party partnerships. All the activity we've seen has come organically through both our email database. I think we've sent 2 emails to our database, and it wasn't dedicated emails. It was, here's some stuff going on and some deals, but also enter the contest. And we've sent maybe 2 or 3 Facebook posts out. So those are what have driven most of the signups. And really, it's because we have very quality lists. We don't burn and churn them. We don't spray and pray them. We spend a lot of time curating the right people. We don't go buy people to add to the list. We organically grow the list. So it's really a testament to how over the several years she's managed that asset of ours is why the campaign's been successful.
You see how he throws those buzzwords around? Burn and churn, pray and spray, just
now, Stuart,
this is getting very competitive.
You want to understand how competitive this is? Stuart wanted to ensure that he was going to beat Westgate. So he told me last night that this next round, now
great smile right there. That is
Stuart is running.
I'm not happy. I'm in second.
Stuart is, as we all know, has been running a very powerful consumer sentiment study that's been averaging around 10,000 respondents. So he tells me that now the last page of the study is congratulations for doing this. You've won a chance to enter our campaign.
So you won a chance to enter this free competition that you could have entered anyway, but because you just filled out a 5-minute study for us, then you definitely get this reward. You get this reward of things. But that's what marketing is, right? It's psychology.
Absolutely.
It's nudging people in a direction. And when someone reads congratulations, you won a chance you've earned this chance, they're a lot more likely. So I literally think we gained from that email we sent out yesterday for the study. I haven't looked at the numbers, but
you got 130 new entrants from when I checked this morning.
Can I just say, if you're talking about psychology right now, Ed is just the puppet master, and he's playing like that guitar.
This is one big ad for Flip2 right now. This is all it is.
And I'm going to quote one of the most famous American sayings of all time: "Hold my beer."
Psychology. Oh, thank God, Lily.
Oh, psychology shows up. There you go.
I do want to say, that the other thing that Stuart really deserves kudos here, in all seriousness, right, is there is a distinct difference in that we ran the campaign that Ed was talking about that, yes, is still number one. Let's be very clear, for a very small property. But
for now.
We ran that a year and a half ago at a time when the economy was in a very different place and things along those lines, it just goes to show that you can do things now, even when times are tough, even when times are hard, that can have great effect. And Stuart deserves some kudos. His team deserves some very serious kudos.
All of it. It's just all Cassidy and her team.
Taking it as far as number 2 during this very, very, tough period. Proud of the fact.
Wait, Ed, how far are we behind?
You see, Stuart, if we're only using submissions as the only measure, you are about 200 submissions behind, a little less than 200 submissions behind.
We'll talk on Monday. We'll talk on Monday, Tim.
But you are 2.1 million
shares
behind in reach, and you are 19,000 behind in warm leads.
Yeah, so I will say this. I may or may not have sent an email after you notified me that we're a second behind Tim, and I saw how many shares he had and his reach. I may or may not have sent an email to the team saying, we need to figure out how to get more shares and more. We may be shifting gears to focus more on that side of the equation.
I'm very proud that at a moment like this, you can make it all the way to number 2.
The gauntlet's been thrown. Holy cow. All right. Game on. I'm gonna play back this video to our team. It's motivational.
I'm opening the book at 3-1 that Stuart makes it. 2-1 that Tim keeps his crown. And I don't know what I'm going to go with Lauren on this one. I'm gonna have to hear a bit more from him about that. So,
and let's face it, you all would be screwed if Lily ends up running a campaign,
right?
Because Lily will destroy all of you.
That's funny.
I don't know about that. I think you guys might have better reach when it comes to campaigns and surveys.
Hey,
from now on, I'm having you run them.
Tim had only the reach of a 19-room property. So,
by the way, you said he had 26
property, an extraordinary 19-room property. I mean, in all seriousness,
it's the coolest property on the East Coast.
What is it? What is the property, guys? What's it called?
Wentworth Mansion in Charleston, South Carolina. It is a gorgeous,
beautiful. I've stayed there before. It's really, really beautiful.
And the restaurant is
literally, it continually makes CN Traveler and Travel and Leisure and for God's sakes, TripAdvisor's best restaurants in America.
Now Tim, his client, was so good at working PR, which actually Wentworth Mansion was the first hotel to ever promote a Flip 2 campaign using traditional PR tactics. And because of that, both the Food Network and Travel and Leisure promoted Wentworth Mansion's campaign.
Yeah.
Hey, by the way, Cassidy, who's been running the campaign, just texted me and said, hey, by the way, I'm listening to the podcast and we're going to crush these guys.
And I would like to point out, given where the industry is right now, given the demand for travel right now, I would be thrilled to see somebody crush these numbers. I mean, in all seriousness, it's a win for all of us. If you manage to make it to number 1, which you probably won't, but if you manage,
that's just fuel for me, man. Keep that coming. That will make me stay up day and night.
I was just tickled by the idea that 2 of my dear friends that I spend an insane amount of time with.
He's pulling the strings again. Here he goes.
happen to be the 2 most successful users of my platform when measured by a single campaign, and that a third dear friend is about to enter that arena because the campaign he's going to be running is not only for the launch of a new hotel, it's a new brand.
Oh, that's
fantastic. It's going to be really interesting. So I'm looking forward 90 days from now to having a discussion about 3 of the hosts of this show holding the top 3 spots of most successful Flip 2 campaigns. And I think I'm going to have to do an award show when all's wrapped up.
We need awards
to crown the king of Flip 2.
Or queen.
things, I want to point out two quick things. One, Ed, I always took it for granted you were on this show at least partly for lead gen. I didn't realize we were the market. Secondly,
His conversion rate's pretty good, you know. He's got 50% adoption
I would
rate.
be happy to add the award to the shelf back there with all of the others.
Nice.
So
Just
what's
leave
the,
a little space. Tim. The third place award is kind of small compared to the first and second, so just leave a little space.
Well, to be fair, Tim, I believe, didn't you win? We put this into the HSMAI Adrians. I think Wentworth won an Adrian for their campaign, if I remember correctly.
I believe they did. To be fair, I don't recall honestly.
there's so many.
So many. I have to keep them straight. No, I actually, I think you all know this. I'm a judge for the Platinum Awards, and I had to recuse myself from that discussion, and so I don't.
Oh, which is Tim's fun way of saying they want a gold Adrian for that.
So
For
what
those
would-
who might be listening, just to make sure, Lily Malkerman and Griffin Semberg have joined us. For those who aren't visually seeing us, listening to us, but just want to make sure people know that we've gained in company and strength. So anyway, sorry, I interrupted you, Trish.
It's fine, Lauren. So what will those awards be called, Ed? I mean, they're going to have to be something like the Flippies, aren't they?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Very much so. Very much so. And if it gets to a tie, we will have to have a flip off.
Wait a second. If we're gonna have a flip off, you know the guy from Jersey is gonna win by.
He's gonna win and be like, hey.
I actually have a screenshot that proves that.
So you're going to have to let us know because we'll all have to turn up in black tie. It's going to be a black tie event.
It's gonna be a big. It's gonna have to be a big thing.
So
There's
I have to
wear
apologize.
this shirt and put on a black tie.
Yeah.
So I have to apologize. Our special guest co-host is so special he didn't co-host. I don't know what happened to Richard. I hope he's okay because I haven't heard anything from him. So we'll try to get him back on the show another time. Hopefully, if he has the opportunity, I guess. But I guess something came up. I emailed him. I haven't seen anything back. I'm thinking maybe a time zone issue or this Friday. I don't know.
Maybe he watched the show.
He might have looked at it and go, "Whoa, no, nope."
Oh, that hospitality digital marketing show.
Oh, that show, no.
I mean, to be honest, it's a good job they've not turned up. You would have. I'm a massive cultural fanboy of Muse, and you would have. It would not have been a pretty sight. It really would not have been. You guys are great. You guys are awesome. You know. Call me.
Right questions.
I have absolutely no questions written down at all from you. Not at all about how he's going to change the business model, and no, nothing at all to make me seem smart in front of him. Real shame. It would have been interesting to have him on.
Well, yeah, we'll definitely try to get him back. I'm sure something came up or something happened or whatever because he was very excited about being on the show. Maybe he did watch the show and go, "Well, wait, no." But
He watched the first 5 or 10 minutes. And he's
yeah,
like,
he was like,
this is not
no.
going to work for me,
No,
actually.
it's going to bring us back a little bit on our scale of But with that in mind, Robert, who is incredibly busy, has yet to send out his list that he normally does each week, which left us a little bit into the blank void of not having something directly referred to that he normally should. But Lily,
You mean wait? You mean the list we normally
never get to.
completely
Never
ignore?
get to.
Never get to.
They are
We're gonna
flying
call
without a
out.
safety net. There is no
We're
safety
gonna call out now that magically this show's gonna be different because we don't have a list to ignore.
There is
That's the
no
way it
net
goes.
below the high wire. Okay,
For
there's
those-
nothing
for
to fall
those-
back on.
For those who don't know the big behind the scenes, you know, this is what literally happens. You're not supposed to take people behind the curtain, but I'm about to do this. Hospitality digital marketing unplugged. Is Robert sends out a list every week of about a dozen stories, and at 12:55 or so p.m. Eastern every week, Lauren says, "So moving on to the second story."
That is true. Or not at all. Like, let's just pick one before we end the show.
Right, exactly.
But with that in mind, Lily did actually have a couple of suggestions for topics. I don't know whether she ever got a chance to pick them up, but Lily, if you want to throw them into the category of and throw them in, since you're
Sure.
kind enough to bring the topic, you brought something for show and tell.
I figured I would do my part. So I'll drop this one into the link. I thought that this was a really interesting take, and not from one of our usual hospitality sources, actually published on CNBC about what hotels will look like after coronavirus.
So this wasn't an ad then for
It was
a company?
not an ad. It's not even self-promotion. Aren't you proud of me?
Wow.
This is very uncharacteristic. No.
This is how we know you didn't get it from Skift.
Right. So I thought that it was really interesting because they're talking about what they think will continue and what won't continue. So sorry, dang it.
Hold on one
Yeah.
second.
Yeah,
Billy. There's-
feedback, yeah.
Someone's got a weird audio thing going on.
It just started to.
All right.
Yeah.
Everyone mute yourself and Lily
Yeah,
talk.
I muted.
Lauren, it may be you actually.
Whoever just
I
muted it was
just did the
them.
mute. I just did the mute thing and it was still going on.
Oh, I muted and it was still going on. But
It's Griffin.
That was me.
It was Griffin.
Oh,
Okay. I'll keep it muted.
Griffin, get out. No, I didn't.
just be eye candy. Just be screen candy.
Yeah.
Screen candy. Come on.
Listen, guys, Griffin shaved 30 minutes ago for us. So, I mean,
Really, go right ahead.
All right, so now that I can not hear myself, that's the perfect actually scenario. I thought that it was really interesting because they're proposing a couple of things that they think are going to stay around with the hotel experience, and they in particular used some upscale and or luxury properties as an example. But like they talked about Sandals Resorts, they talked about Camelback Resort in Pennsylvania, not the one here, the Hotel Crescent Court in Dallas, and just some of the different things that they're doing. And some seem legit and others seem really kind of a little extreme to me. For example, the Camelback Resort, when they reopen on June 11th, they're asking their guests to wear a mask 24/7 while at the hotel, which as somebody who has the distinct pleasure of wearing one of those on a regular basis right now, I imagine some guests may not be super excited about, but on the other hand, from a safety perspective, they might be. So just thought I would contribute that for discussion and see what your thoughts are about which of these things will stay and will not stay. And along those lines, they talk about digital keys, and I've noticed a lot of people who've been let go from other places, like Muse, for example, have recently been added to OpenKey's staff, which seems to be ramping up, which doesn't surprise me at all.
When you say 24/7, I mean, are you talking just in public places here or actually in your own room as well?
They didn't specify, I imagine, just in the public areas.
Yeah, I would say, because I don't really fancy having to sleep in PPE in a hotel.
And a mask and a
Yeah,
paper mask.
yeah,
It just disintegrates around your face. Like, we've spoken about this in the last few weeks, and the phrase that keeps coming back to me is it taking the hospitality out of hospitality. This article really says they're not going to be opening doors. They won't be opening taxi doors or opening up hotel doors for you. You're going to have to sort of nudge it open whilst trying to drag your bags behind you, which, according to the article, you won't be taken by bellhop anymore. There'll be no staff to help you with your bags because obviously you've had your grubby hands all over them from your house to the hotel. I think there's going to be a real struggle in making it an attractive place to go and unwind. I mean, you're going to feel on edge, but just in the different scenery, and you're going to be doing all the things you had to do at home, but just in a different building you're paying to stay in.
But it is interesting to see some of the innovation that's coming out of it. I saw this on LinkedIn. There's somebody's created. It's like a foot opener for doors. It's you literally hook your foot on it, flick it open, and the door is open. Door opens, so it's you don't have to touch it with your hands. I could see that. Obviously it's not going to work for everyone that's got a handle, but for public spaces where it is a bit more of a swing door, it's going to be really interesting to see what other innovation comes out here and how things actually change in the future, and as well, how long will they last? Because I think Stuart mentioned this last week. Remember when you went to the supermarket for the first time? It was like you're walking into a film contamination zone. It's like, oh, what do I touch? What don't I touch? Then after 2 or 3 visits, it's like, yeah, okay, I'm grabbing the bananas. Here we go, and I'm out. Whatever it is, the same is going to be for the hotel industry, I think.
Yeah, I read an article this week. It was talking about the power of recency bias in how You know, we're all struggling from that a little bit right now in terms of the new information that's coming into us is outweighing pre-existing information. And so I think a lot of what we think is going to be permanent or think is going to be a big deal, as it becomes, you know, passe, it's going to diminish in its power. So, for example, I think things like wearing face masks for staff. I had the pleasure of serving as the chair of a task force here in the Myrtle Beach area. We called it Accelerate MB, and we developed a bunch of guidelines for restaurants and attractions and hotels and some other establishments too. But we went through kind of as a commonsensical thing, and we got a lot of pushback early on for saying staff had to wear masks or certain restrictions. But after people started deploying it, and they'd been doing it for a week, it was no longer an issue. So I think some of this is going to become, you know, reduced in intensity over time. But there are some things that I just don't think are going to be enforceable at all. If you look at the stories, and sure, the media is picking and choosing what they're promoting, but there's a lot of incidents already where folks are trying to enforce mask wearing by patrons, and it is not going well. You know, there was someone in Target this week that broke an employee's arm. There have been shootings. There's been flat out protests, a lot of police called. So I don't think any hotel really should try too hard to enforce that. I think it should be a recommendation, which is what a lot of our guidelines ended up being. Was these are recommendations, but you need to be really well trained if you're going to enforce these things. But I don't think there's going to be some permanent changes. How we interact and how we're mindful about what we do when we're checking in, for example, is going to change. And to your point about OpenKey, you know, Fuel has a mobile app product, and it's a product that we've had for 2 or 3 years with Digital Key, with mobile check-in, and we could not sell it for the last 2.5 years. You know, we had maybe 60 properties on the product over the last 2.5 years. We cannot field enough right now. The number of calls that are coming in, the number of demo requests, the number of contracts we're signing is insane. We're on target to double our installation base this month and then probably double it again next month. So it's something that, because reality shifted, people are rethinking things. So I think there are going to be some things that change, but a lot of this 6 months from now, or 12 months from now, or 18 months from now, I don't think it's going to be a big deal.
A compliment to Tim. Of all the people I've been talking to, and many are on the screen now, everyone has quoted you as saying, as going back to saying we overestimate the impact in the short term and underestimate the long term.
It's
2 years to the 10 years.
Bill Gates.
Yeah, I know. You brought that to the dialogue, so it's always as it always says, as Tim says.
Tim quotes Bill Gates. Let's be fair.
But still, the same
methodology. Fine. But it's now Lauren. You remember when Lauren said that thing that was really smart?
No, see, nobody does. That doesn't happen. None of that happens. It always happens with Tim. It never happens with me. It's like, oh, do you remember what Lauren said? Oh, geez.
I'm glad you brought up
because Tim is the most tweetable person in the world. Everything that comes out of his mouth is thought out. Like, he communicates more effectively than anyone else.
Only because I can remember nothing that is longer than 280 characters. It's an aging thing. You know, you have to learn to think in short sound bites, because otherwise you can't remember a damn thing. The actual quote, and I think it's an important thing to realize, because I think it's very appropriate in this case, so I appreciate you bringing it up, Lauren. See, I couldn't remember your name.
Unforgettable. It's like, what's your name? Whatever it is.
The quote is, we always overestimate the change that will occur in the next 2 years and underestimate the change that will occur in the next 10. And, you know, we are rapidly moving into another phase of this. I'm not going to call it the new normal, because I don't know that this is a new normal, and I don't know when we will achieve the new normal. We're in another phase of this pandemic, right? And this pandemic could last for, you know, another 6 months. It could last for another 2 years, right? The 1918 flu circled the globe 3 times over a 2-year period. So, you know, this is something that may be with us for some time, and we may just go through various phases of, you know, higher case levels, lower case levels. And so the behaviors we're going to see over the next 2 years may be dramatic for a moment, but then as we move into a different phase, could shift to something else. We're not going to know till we're 5, 6, 7 years out where we'll end up. I don't want this to be a negative thing by any stretch, But a friend of mine, Mark Schaefer, really smart guy, just did a piece the other day, and they talked in it. He mentioned the average time it took to generate a vaccine in the world is 36 years. For, across all diseases, right? The fastest it's ever been done, and I don't have his blog post up in front of me, so I might get this wrong, with something like 6 to 8 years or something like that. So, I mean, this could be something we're dealing with for a while. And so, what is permanent, what is temporary, and the like, it's all temporary till it isn't.
Right, which is
Right.
why, honestly, I mean, this focus on the messaging or the thinking that, once there's a vaccine, people will be ready. You need to be hoping for something a bit more realistic, like once there are effective treatments that cut down the death rate, or things that are more realistic to what humanity has accomplished. We still haven't cured the common cold, and it's not from lack of trying. It's incredibly tricky. Viruses in general are way more tricky than bacteria, and as a species, we've struggled with both treatment and prevention of virus spread.
I mean, but look at things like, one of the things that I always find really interesting, and Lily will appreciate this because it's a psychology thing here, is, I read a lot of science fiction and things like that. And the best science fiction is stuff that doesn't talk about the science, but it talks about how society adapts to change, right? How cultures emerge. If you think about it, hand washing, for better or worse, was not as common as it should have been even 6 months ago. Right now, people are washing hands left and right. You've got people who are, there's a small but very vocal subset of folks who are violently opposed, and I use that word very specifically, to wearing a mask in public right now, even though it's probably the thing that's going to do the most to suppress the virus in public spaces.
I mean, to be fair, it's probably because they haven't shopped for the really cool masks.
Right. But is it possible that behavior, metastasizes and gets bigger? Is it possible that those folks get sick and die off? Or is it possible? Hey, I'm just being harsh, but or is it possible that that the societal pressures become such that people who don't wear masks get socially shunned and start to modify their behavior because they want to, see their grandkids and stuff like that, right? So we don't really know, but that's going to be the stuff we want to watch because that's going to shape how guests will behave and how we have to be responsive to those changes.
Now, if you do remember, I a few weeks ago was talking about the fact that there would be people traveling in force.
Yeah.
And I was told a story yesterday about a friend of mine who we all know. He had to travel to go to a funeral, and he had to fly for the first time. And I was really I was dying to hear what his experience was, thinking it was going to be like Stuart's grocery store thing. Yeah, no. His experience was he doesn't think he'll end up getting on a plane again in over a year. Because, one, both flights were completely full. 2, the people on those flights were not at all acting differently from how they would normally act on a flight. 3, it was mostly the people you'd be surprised to understand that they were traveling. People with 2 or 3 kids in tow. It was, and while the airports seemed relatively empty, the gates that his flights were at were packed and no one was socially distancing. And so now, to be fair, this was a Daytona to Cincinnati flight. However, it was surprising that that type of traveler was so prevalent. It wasn't just necessity travel. It was literally people going for their beach vacations with their kids. But it was also just really surprising that most of them did not at all appear to alter their behavior. He said almost no face masks on the flight.
Yeah, but to be fair, when you are on in that plane situation, we're all programmed now to get to the front of the queue so you can make sure you can get your bag in the overhead locker. And as silly as it sounds, you've still got that. There's still that competitiveness, isn't there? And I'd love to make a joke about it, but it is actually quite
nuts from the flight. That's the joke you were looking for, Tristan.
Yeah, sorry.
Especially if Stuart is on the flight.
Yeah, especially if Stuart's on the flight, indeed. Yeah, his elbow flying everywhere with Stuart. Just get out of the way.
Stuart is carrying a spray bottle that's just water, but it says COVID-19 on it. And anyone who tries to compete with him, wow, he spritz them.
Wow.
That's a great idea.
That is dark, Ed.
That went really dark.
Hey, Valin.
Hey, man.
But there's certain things, because we've been more programmed at what to do when we get on a plane than we have been what to do get on a plane during COVID-19 and post COVID-19. So I think there's going to be obviously the responsibilities from the airlines to figure this out.
Tristan, I like that you use the word "we've been programmed." Let's face it, we who travel, a lot. There's only one thing we've been programmed to do when we get on a plane, and it's to quietly judge all the people who somehow have made it this far in life with never being on a plane before, or have either just that or have completely forgotten how airports and airplanes work, and for some reason are completely challenged by these very simplistic moves. That's the we that have been programmed.
Quietly.
That's something that Ed is not doing. He's not doing the quieter thing. Hey, buddy, that bag ain't going to fit.
You can't hear yourself because you have noise canceling headphones on. But.
Right. And that's the quiet part because, I don't want someone to be able to talk to me. I just want them to be able to hear me.
But I do have to subscribe to the idea of what Tristan's saying in the sense of personality changes and so forth. Down here, there's a large retirement community, obviously. And so they're a little bit more mindful with the masks and the gloves and the distancing and so forth. And I'm now getting my retired friends that talk about this. They go out when they do go out and they have to get something and shop, that they're hearing chicken noises. Because there's now a sentiment of people that now look at people that are taking precautions as being chickens.
Oh,
are you kidding me?
I mean, the good news in that is those chicken noises will probably stop within 30 to 40 days.
That's what I'm thinking. If you're a Star Trek fan, what was it? Joe Takai went over and said, think of everybody that's jumping out now because of the loosening restrictions as all red shirts.
to be fair, I mean, they could just carry eggs with them.
Throw them back.
Yeah.
And I'm not necessarily a violent person, but if somebody makes that noise, if I'm wearing a mask, I will definitely be answering back to that.
Well, all you need to do is walk
in the character of a chicken, though, Lauren.
Yes, yes.
all Lauren will need to do is walk near them, and they'll be instantly struck by lightning.
Yes, I will bring the wrath of Thor on them.
Oh, yeah, Tristan and Ben, you are aware that Lauren has been struck by lightning 6 times, correct?
Yeah.
I didn't know it was 6.
No, 3 direct, and 3 that any of us would describe as being struck by lightning.
It's just a deflection. Yeah.
Well, first of all, it's your own fault for being so tall.
Or going out in the rain when there's lightning. That could be another bad thing to do. Yeah.
Lauren, by the way, for people who watch the show and don't realize this, Lauren is so tall that when it's raining, trees stand under him.
And there's the dad joke we were waiting for in the corner.
Wow.
This is dad joke.
How
I
did
did-
you open you again?
So I have to go back and just give Robert credit because he has actually sent
did
out
make the
the
list.
list. So thank you, Robert.
Well, I want
the
to be fair that the
original,
only
we're on
reason
track.
Lily is mentioning that is because Robert happened to list the article,
My article is number 2.
that Lily came up with.
Great minds think alike. The great minds think alike.
No, but I was just kind of looking through the travel and leisure one about where Americans are looking to travel next, because that's always good information to have. So Orlando's at the top of the list, which doesn't surprise me at all. Again, to my point, that people are going to try to get rid of their kids as soon as possible.
You've never been to Orlando with kids, then?
I've been to Orlando as a kid.
It's the opposite of that. There is no getting rid of them in Orlando. You go to like
True,
Boca.
but it keeps them entertained.
You go to Boca Resort, to get rid of your kids. You know,
I think what I found that Orlando got rid of when I took my kids there really quickly was money.
yeah,
That's exactly right.
very effective of,
Very good.
of helping you lose
Yes.
money and feel like it's the best thing ever, which is different than Vegas. Vegas didn't go through the effort of taking your money and making you feel good about it. Orlando is just quite skilled at putting a massive smile on your face while they take every single penny to your name and to your credit.
Well, now, I know it's not in his list of articles, but there was an article that did come up about the 10 best and worst cities that will come out of the COVID pandemic early. And to Stuart's credit, it's all in his neighborhood. Or a lot of
all the best and worst, or
yeah.
all the best?
the good ones. No, because they're talking about the low density populations and the high tech capabilities of certain, and Raleigh's in that market, Durham's in that market, Charleston. There's a lot of the cities in that area because, and this goes to the conversation of, with the ability to work now no longer being centric to an office, the population shifting that might come out of this transition, where if I can work anywhere, I want to work where I want to live. And it's not in downtown city anymore. It's not where I have to worry about the commute and the travel and the time and go to the cubicle and all that stuff. And if that's the case, then I want to live somewhere nice. And there's a lot of nice places around
somewhere where they have
Brian
really
Chesky-
nice Southern accents like Stuart.
I think Brian Chesky I do think Brian Chesky gets the award for the quote of the Corona so far, where when he said the other day that, why he thinks leisure travel is going to be the thing that saves the industry from this and why it's good for Airbnb. Obviously, he has a vested interest in saying that, but I also think that he's on to something. He said, historically we have worked by going to a place and we've stared at screens for entertainment, and that he believes COVID-19 is going to flip that 180 degrees. I just think that makes a lot of sense. Our work is now staring at screens, and our travel is going to be more for fun. And I think,
that's a good point. It's a really good point. People are going to want to get away from this for a while, in that sense to it as well. But it just was kind of interesting. The population shift and change in behavior concept might be the long-term effect of what you're talking about, Pim, where this is going to affect our, you think about this, the downtown parking garages, the downtown restaurants that have the corporate lunches and the caterings, and you're changing dynamics now. We already know a lot of companies like WeWorks and so forth are, they're going to be in this new paradigm,
but yeah.
of survivability. So yeah, in that sense, he did one of the first article with the French thing. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Val.
I was going to say it could even have an impact on politics, right? So if so an interesting thing, and it's not here, right? It's not just here in the States, but it's everywhere. Is that if you don't have to live in San Francisco, as an example, if you can move to Montana or Omaha or something, and you take whatever your beliefs are with you, right? So instead of being a big bubble of way liberal thinkers in San Francisco, now they spread out, or conversely, I don't know, people from the other side of the spectrum spread out as well. We may stop having so much of this bubbly culture.
Yeah, and it may also strongly neutralize the extremism.
It could.
Right.
Put an extreme liberal with an extreme conservative. Hopefully, one of them moves a little in to realize good governing should leave us all slightly disappointed.
And not to mention bringing housing prices into line, right?
Yep.
I mean, So it could be. It just, even thinking about it is so fascinating. We'll have to see what happens.
Yeah,
So
even the Katrina effect. When Katrina hit and the dissemination of a lot of people from the New Orleans market and Louisiana into the Texas, that changed the politics of Houston. That changed the politics of Dallas because of the different population flux. Yeah, there was a return to the area after time in some sense, but most of it never did go back. It stayed where it went when it was relocated.
You guys are crazy if you think that's going to happen. Crazy. We just talked about the masks. The masks is nothing more than a veiled political debate right now. That's all it is, right? People hate each other on each side of the aisle. And they're both
Today,
stupid, both sides.
Today.
Hey, the aliens are going to fix all
Dude,
that. Stuart. The
whatever.
aliens,
No,
as
they didn't.
Pentagon pointed out, is going to
No,
get
they
this.
got tired. They had 2 weeks where we were all in this together, and then to Ed's point, now we're all in the same ocean in different boats. But half the boats are going this way, and half are going this way. And if you catch one of the ones going the wrong way, then you're going to make chicken noises at them. So
Hold on.
no, people are not going to migrate in live in some utopian kumbaya hippie commune. They hate each other right now. It's not going to happen. You guys are crazy. Crazy.
No, say what you really mean, Stuart. No, say it.
Stuart, here's the thing.
I'm moving back to England. This country's getting crazy. We're like
What's going to happen?
we're 6 months away from civil war. It's insane over here.
No, it's fine.
Crazy.
Let the Civil War happen, and then we can have a full reset, and then we can go from England again.
I was
you know?
going to say, it's funny how the Brits are suggesting to have the United States have another civil war. So
I'm
the
not
Brits
suggesting, I'm predicting. There's a difference. I'd love for you guys to be right, but I just don't see it happening.
Veiled
Just go
opportunity
read through your
for them to
Facebook.
come take us back over.
Stuart, I've become substantially more conservative since leaving New Hampshire.
Okay.
Because
Mr.
I
Tim,
live
your
in
microphone is
Florida.
low, which is why you can't get in a word in edgewise because you're a little quiet today. But you go ahead.
Who's this?
You.
Oh,
Yeah, you're quiet today. You need to turn your levels up.
Yeah, your mic is a little low.
Oh, I can do that.
That's why you're not able to get your sharp elbow in because
Yeah,
everybody's
that's
like,
why
oh,
I'm
it's all right.
totally ignoring you.
How's that? Is that a little
Fine.
So we're talking politics, and he doesn't. He shies away from politics.
I mean, if you didn't notice, Tim shrunk almost 35% during the political discussion to be less noticeable.
Hey, my belief is I'm not unwilling to debate politics at a bar. I just don't think I'm changing anybody's mind. So why waste the breath? You know, this thing people often remember, and again, this goes back to the 2 years, 10 years thing that we were talking about before, right? Is in 1968 in this country, we were having government offices bombed about once a month. You know, in 1860, we actually went to war over this. There have been periods of greater partisan difference in this country than we have today. It just feels like this is as bad as it's been because it's as bad as it's been in our lifetime for most people. I'm not saying this is not good. I'm not saying this is good where we are, rather. I'm saying that you know, historically, there are worse places to be. I don't know that we're that far off of those. But, you know, we've come
the big
out of
difference
places too, and it's possible the same will happen this time.
Right, but the difference is everything we're exposed to today reinforces pushes us to the extremes of our opinion. We're all in bubbles. Go read a Facebook feed from someone that has left-leaning versus someone that has right-leaning, and everything is reinforcing their worst fears and hopes, and they're getting pushed and marginalized.
Here's the thing, and I talk about this a lot, and you guys have heard me talk about this a lot. You know, another quote that I like was this French philosopher, Paul Virilio, who said, when we build the ship, we build the shipwreck, right? And the reality is the benefits of the ship far outweigh the benefits of the shipwreck. What is definitely happening, and this is the thing I would encourage people when you see these stories and you hear these stories, is think about who benefits when we are divided. That's the thing that you really need to look at, because a lot of the division that is occurring today is not actually occurring organically. It is occurring because it is in the best interest of foreign actors to actually encourage that division, period. Now, that doesn't mean that there aren't people who are responsive to it. There are. But the fact of the matter is that division is being stoked. It is being stoked artificially, and people are gaming the system for the benefit of their own political, benefit, or their television ratings, cable news networks, kinds, or other nations, interests in destabilizing the most stable democracy in the history of the world. So let's be really focused on what is actually occurring there.
Or QAnon, right?
What's going on?
First we got the dad joke, and now we got the dad lecture.
We got the dad joke.
Tim just gave us what is known as dad-splaining.
But I mean, you got to ask the question. Seriousness, you have to ask the question of who benefits from the division.
You're 100% right.
Yep,
I mean, like Ed did at the beginning of the show, and I have noticed that since Ben and Tris have been with us, there's been a lot of division. Like maybe there's an English motivation to this. I don't know.
Oh.
I don't want to let
Infiltration.
early, but these foreign actors are not joking.
Oh, I was totally talking about Ben and Tristan. Damn limeys.
So speaking of foreign actors, let's talk about what France is trying to do.
Oh yes, please. We'll go back to the top topic. I'm going to throw that in there.
Yes.
Thank you very much
So
for bringing it up.
I have 4 words for that. I have 4 words for that whole thing. Good luck.
Before you do that, you got to share the link.
Here, let's go. I'll pop the link in so you can see. Yeah.
Good luck with that. I mean, that's just.
I have a similar 4 words. 4 words. Who is it for?
Yeah.
If it's for
I have many words to explain to our audience that what they're talking about is the idea that France is trying to build its own rival to Airbnb and Booking.com. Now the hosts may do their 4 words discussion.
Yeah, everybody go around and give your 4 words to France.
But if it's built for the benefit of travelers and they really think about what we're doing for travelers and things along those lines, maybe it's got a chance of succeeding. If it's built as a way to say, hey, it's going to be, just like Expedia or just like Airbnb or things along those lines, but solely to benefit the suppliers, it's going to fail miserably.
Can you name one thing that any government in the world, in the history of man, that was done solely for the benefit of the people?
I have to take into question this one sentence early on. Actually, it's the first sentence in the article. The French government will join forces to build an internet site aimed at winning back customers from U.S. online travel giants. Winning them back because we used to book with the French government previous to
Quite often. Now, to be fair, a lot of people don't know this,
which is tax.
but are you aware that one of the most aggressive cyber espionage nations in the world is France? They are one of the most aggressive cyber espionage governments in the world, to the point where if you have a specific level of security clearance, because of stuff you do with our government, you're actually not allowed to ever go to France, let alone, be briefed or debriefed, because France is so notorious for spying and espionage, both governmental and corporate.
I think I just handed my tinfoil hat to Ed.
Yeah. On behalf of the Brits on the show, I'm going to recuse us all from having any opinion on France at this point. 100-year war with the
How
country.
can a South African speak for the Brits?
I'm sure. Ben, do you remember this early on? I'm sure France has already got their own OTA that it's just explicitly for French hotels. And I can't remember whether it was government backed or not. And I'm racking my brain. We're going back about 4 or 5 years ago that we last saw this. So this isn't new for the French market per se.
Right.
Well, Accor put together Fast Booking, which was an aggregation first of Accor inventory. Then they opened it up to non-Accor inventory. And then AvailPro bought it, and now it's called something else. But originally, I think that's what part of Fast Booking was, although it was more European than French. But it was very much focused in Europe.
The URL is going to be Vive la France!
At the end of the day, it doesn't really matter what kind of distribution channels are created right now, because Google is going to eat them all eventually. And the current situation has accelerated that tremendously.
For sure.
I know Tim and I have both been very vocal about the fear of Google over the last several months before this all happened. And now go to any city and Google hotels in that city. There's almost zero ads from any of the OTAs because they've all pulled their budget and have all said they're going to pull their budget for a long time. And guess what's got even more prominent? It's all of Google's assets. They're gonna dominate. They're gonna take massive market share. This is very different than the last time we had a downturn where the OTAs grew, because this time the OTAs, they don't have any capital to reinvest to build the demand. So Google's just sitting there laughing all the way to the bank right now, and then they destroy everyone.
Capitalizing quite a bit on this as well within the meta search industry. There were already plans afoot. Meta search was a very strange relationship with Google and everybody else. But I've heard that they're a pay to stay commission based offering, which was always quite hush and not really pushed up in terms of a direct connection for Google Hotel Ads. I've heard quite a lot of chatter that it's being promoted more now, that Google are wanting to push this. It makes sense because it doesn't really cost them anything, from an advertising point of view. A third party who's going to offer a commission, well, they're still got to pay Google. Google doesn't have to pay itself. So there's a real opportunity there to help out the hotel industry, who won't have huge budgets. They won't have massive pockets to be able to go and throw lavish digital marketing budgets out there. So I can see them stepping in and really do that once they figure out the connectivity issue, which I also know from, I may or may not know, allegedly, possibly, that there may have been an alpha that I was invited onto, possibly, may have been, that did have an NDA attached to it about something they were doing in regards to that. But obviously, who could talk, possibly? Allegedly.
It's just a hypothetical conversation anyway. So that hypothetically could have happened. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And the French were probably behind it too.
You remember the movie It's a Wonderful Life, and when there was the big run on the bank in the movie It's a Wonderful Life, right? Yeah. And Mr. Potter, who's the villain of the piece, bought the bank, right? Google can be called Mr. Potter in this scenario. I mean, this is the scenario where the rich get richer. And if you are not in a position to buy the bank, you're in a position to get run over. Frankly, I did a podcast episode about this a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago, just about Google and Amazon and Apple's secret plan right now, which is not that secret, is to extend their dominance, and we are definitely seeing that in this.
To add to that, from a technology point of view, I don't know if people noticed, but Google was offering a lot of variations to the inclusiveness of Google My Business functionalities.
Oh yeah.
Their COVID aspect, where you could put in if you were actually offering value proposition to first responders and things like this. And at first I thought, wow, this is really helpful. That's great, because now we can identify the hotel as being supportive of those that are looking for. Then I began thinking about the evil genius of it. Is because of the schema that they already forced us to structure through for the benefit of improvement of searchability and so forth. But now we're creating a whole new area of opportunity marketing on the localized level, the geofencing, the proximity marketing, things like that. That also means not just the searchability of the way we know now with search pages, but actually the discoverability based on the interactiveness of what the services are providing. I'm now able to communicate a whole lot more through what they discover in their interactions services than they do from the actual search services. And it seems to be growing. I think that's going to be a continuing trend for them, because already I can splinter my advertising with them. Already I can segment my messaging with them, and I can update that on such a consistent level that I can actually change and put more dynamic content in rather than just static NAP information or something now. So it's kind of neat that that's coming.
Well, and it's not even whether or not they're evil or things along those lines. They're doing what is right for their shareholders. But let's be fair, Google gives nothing away for free. When Google is saying, this is the thing that we're doing and here's how you benefit, that is true. You also have to say, okay, how does Google benefit from this? And the reality is it puts them in a better position. To be fair, Google's strength, and I've said this before, you've heard me say this before, you all know this, Google's strength is incredibly fragile, right? Because they have one huge problem that no other monopolist, for lack of a better term, has ever had to deal with in the past, which is the switching costs for customers are zero. If I want to use Bing for search tomorrow, I could. I would choose not to in most cases, because Google tends to give me answers. But I can leave Google in an instant. And they make, 80% of their revenue from people clicking on ads.
But see, this is where
precipitously, if in fact people were to choose a different search engine.
But here's the thing: Google didn't go after making it hard for you to switch. They've gone after making it hard to build something that's competitive against them, which, quite honestly, makes it take longer for the word monopoly to get thrown out. Right? I mean, they looked at Microsoft's missteps as they came to prominence and went, we need a better way to wall this garden.
Yep.
And it's not going to be on the back of the consumer. It's going to be difficult for companies to come close. And so how do we do that? Well, it's going to look like charity, but let's build architecture that just is free and works its way in to every square inch of fabric of the internet, like Google Analytics or Google Tag Manager. Let's do that. And let's just give it for free. We don't need to make money off of it.
Right.
Let's make it sophisticated. Let's, get people on that because, then we have that. And then, that also allows us to completely understand full funnel consumer behavior, even as it disappears off of our search engine.
Right. And if I can say one quick thing, though, what I agree with you, I completely agree with you. What I think we also have to look at, and I'd really be curious for Ben and Tristan's point of view on this specifically, because where you see this play out is there's a big difference in the way that the U.S. looks at antitrust and a big way that the difference in the way the EU looks at antitrust, right? In the U.S.'s position since the early 80s has basically been, as long as consumer prices don't rise, there is no harm to the market. And what the EU tends to do as their framework is, if competition is impacted, ultimately that may be bad for the market. And so their framework for how they assess, and you look at the challenges Google is having in the EU specifically, that's the place where you see some difference. If we get a new attorney general tomorrow, or the attorney general changes his mind tomorrow and decides we're going to use a different framework in the way we assess what antitrust looks like, Google could have all kinds of problems from that.
Yeah, but see, here's the trick. You won't know it happened because Google won't rank it.
And that's a really good point. You got it.
I literally just took a simple swear to God, it almost went right across.
That is a really good point here, because
Well done.
everybody on this call here can remember a time before Google, or am I just showing my age now? So, you can remember all of the other...
Jeeves.
Yeah, Ask Jeeves, Yahoo, whatever.
Lycos, Excite, yeah.
Search.
AOL. Who's still got an AOL email account? Anyway, the thing is, we've now got a generation. They've done the ultimate branding trick. It's the same as Hoover and whatever. You don't go to the internet to search anything now. You Google it.
Yeah.
When you become the verb,
my doctors, everybody else who's coming through here, do not know a world with any other real competition to Google.
Yeah.
Right. And I do think
They all, sorry.
it's interesting, though, because there may be some new competition in the near future. I don't know if you guys have been reading about Kendra at all from Amazon. So this is right now, it's not a public search engine. It's an AI based search engine that they're including in some of their enterprise solutions. But there is speculation that this could be a test run to create something that would compete with Google. And Amazon is another pretty big following. So it would be very interesting if they did come out with something, and it would be really smart of them to test it behind the scenes first and work out all the kinks and then release it, so they actually have a shot at going up against Amazon and don't just kind of get laughed at the way that a lot of people do with Bing.
Unlike what they did with the phone.
Yeah.
Right, yes.
Amazon phone.
Yeah, what is funny about that specifically is that Google actually does face very real competition from Amazon today when we talk about e-commerce. If you look at what they've been investing in, if you listen to what they've been saying on their quarterly earnings calls and things like that, they recognize that most people today, when they need to buy something, actually don't search Google. They actually go to Amazon.
Right.
And it is a very real problem because, again, Google makes 80% of its revenues from paid clicks.
Mm-hmm.
So,
You know why?
But it's still a fraction of all searches. If you look at the data, I think it's
fraction
like
is-
1% of all searches is e-commerce related.
Yeah, but
sure, you gotta remember,
listen,
hey,
Amazon could fix that by adding porn search, and then they would be right up there, 50-50 with Google.
But no, you got to remember, e-commerce is growing dramatically, especially right now. And second, and I didn't come up with this. This is Good to Great, or one of those books. I'm going to forget which book. the way you lose if you are a market leader is you lose at the margins first. Right?
For sure.
You start to change people's behavior because it's a better answer, right? Or a better solution to their needs.
But I would say that probably the reason people go straight to Amazon for the buying behavior is once your wallet is involved, there's a lot more layers that you have to think about when it comes to security and trust. And people feel secure on the Amazon site and they trust Amazon to take care of things or have easy return policies, whereas Google will return any company may or may not take 2 to 3 weeks from China to receive your product, may or may not have, a refund policy that you have to do a deep dive on to research. So I'm the same way. I use Google for almost everything. But when it comes to buying, I go straight to Amazon and only revert to Google if Amazon does not have what I'm looking for.
Strangely enough, there was a person who was talking the comparison of how they looked at Google versus Amazon, just in general conversation, and they made an interesting observation that I actually echoed and said, that makes sense. They felt that nobody really watches Google. There is no person, there's no personality, there's no entity, and Google is itself its own conglomerate. Where for some reason they feel because Amazon has Bezos or that there seems to be a personality or person to it because of how the interactions are. They feel like Amazon knows me, because of the referrals and recommendations. Where
because
Google
it does
is
know
only
you.
responding.
Because they spy on you.
For my buying habits, I give her the coffee comes right out of the computer. Hello, Lauren, ready to buy some more stuff today?
Well,
let me ask you this:
collect the data as they listen in and making sure to integrate that too.
So if you had to choose that all the data that Google had on you or all the data that Amazon had on you was publicly released, which would you prefer to be released?
Amazon.
No question, right? So Google has a lot of data on you too. It's different data, but they have a lot of data on you.
Right. Well, you asked which would be publicly released, right? So we all know Google has lots of different types of data,
including for most of you, every email you send or receive.
That's right.
Yeah, correct.
That's exactly right.
But then again, Amazon has also got what's going on in a lot of people's homes, because there's a lady's name that I can't say because she's right next to my computer and I haven't got her on mute, and she'll probably answer me back right now if I was to say that. So
I can pull out his little hat again.
I will be able to follow this Kendra aspect, though. I think most of the time, if you bring up that someone's going to go to war with Google, it brings me back to that Norm Macdonald skit where he's like, "Oh, in Germany, decide they're going to go to war with who? With the world, and then they come back again and they do it again, right?" I would usually dismiss something like that, but I think the user sentiment and the user trust in Amazon that Stuart just kind of alluded to right there could open up a large opportunity.
Hey, let's not sleep on Facebook.
I was just going to say the same. But their reputation's damaged a little bit, isn't it?
But see, if you go look at the data, they've obviously have benefited greatly from COVID because Facebook has grown globally.
Oh, he froze.
Oh,
substantially.
a dramatic
I froze.
Substantially
for the last 2 months.
Yeah,
it was a dramatic.
But it's perfect conditions for them to grow right now. If you look back at November, their numbers were dipping. Their number of engaged users was decreasing,
and they dipped every month from November to March.
Ad revenue isn't growing though, so their user base is, but the last months have also shown that their ad revenue is dipping. I would imagine that would catch up at some point though, right? If the user count stays high, then advertisers would be stupid not to go back to Facebook as a buy.
Where Facebook has gotten hurt on ad revenue specifically is the things where people buy ads on Facebook historically have been auto dealers, car brands, travel. It's the industries that are getting impacted that's hurting them.
Yep. But they're going to come out the other end of this.
Oh God, yeah.
Okay. Much bigger. Because in March alone, it was just in the U.S., it was 5.7 million new users. That was enough to make up for every month of loss dating back to November.
Right.
And there's another company as well that has a similar that's in a similar uptake to Facebook. It's not digital marketing related or marketing related as such, but I'm personally really intrigued to see how this unfolds because it's got another giant. It's almost like a mini version of what we're talking here. Netflix has seen a surge in subscriptions because everyone's stuck at home. You know, what do we do? Let's watch TV. You know, stand in front of the idiot box and we'll watch that all day. But it's just at the point that Disney have really released their own channel as well. And I believe I was reading something where Disney's been, you know, their sales, their uptick from what they were expecting to what has actually happened. It's not quite there.
Oh, Disney Plus? Hold on.
No, it's the opposite, dude.
Disney Plus, as of February, Disney Plus hit their 5-year goal for paid subscribers. They are over 50 million. This is their global, though. Yeah. They're over 50 million paid subscribers to Disney Plus. That was their 5-year goal. They did it in 6 months.
Well, in the UK, they went live about COVID-19. Or I think was it during, Ben?
Yeah, I think it was. I think it was as the shenanigans had kicked off.
Yeah, and I believe from what I was reading, obviously I've not verified the source, but what it was saying certainly from the UK, it's not taken off anywhere near to the same level.
Oh, what, you guys don't like Baby Yoda?
No, you know what happened? They were 6 months late, and everyone had already watched The Mandalorian from the internet. They went and downloaded it, so they didn't have to subscribe.
Because we're screwed over here in the UK. If we can get it for free.
So, Stuart, by the way, I was able to procure face masks that are Baby Yoda face masks. So
sweet, yeah.
There's that.
We've ordered. I guess they're coming from China because it's going to take like 30 days to get here. But we ordered a bunch of different Star Wars face masks.
Oh, so it's going to be
go around your neck and you pull up.
So it's going to be very similar to a vaccine. They'll be pre-infected.
I'm pretty sure the 2 months it takes to come over here or whatever it is, the virus will be non-active at that point.
On a different note, one that didn't make the news articles but did make the news in general, Hyatt permanently fired 40% of their entire infrastructure.
So I'm gonna claim victory here in a second, and I feel bad about this legitimately. We had a show, earlier this year, way before all this stuff blew up, that, I said there's no way in 5 years' time that the big hotel companies as we know them today are the same companies. IHG, Wyndham, Marriott, Hilton, Hyatt, right? There's no way that there isn't further consolidation. I cannot imagine, unless group business comes back in a meaningful way faster than anyone expects it to, that Hyatt is a going concern in 2 years' time.
No, I agree. I mean, they have the worst possible collection of hotels for this situation.
For the current situation.
Yeah, because the majority of their hotels are not going to see recovery inside of a 12-month period.
Yeah, they're just bad through no fault of their own.
None. I mean, they're a great model. If there isn't a global pandemic.
Great hotels.
Yep.
Well, I even see Omni in an odd position when it comes to that too, based on their inventory portfolio. That
they're a little more diversified.
Too. Yeah. So they don't have the same market pressures that Hyatt will have.
Well, and Omni is a little bit better
position. By the way, don't buy stock or sell stock because of anything we're saying here.
Right, never. But Omni more so than Hyatt at least has a strong leisure contingent to the majority of their properties, where Hyatt is very all in on corporate and large group, and that's challenging, and it's challenging for a couple of reasons. One, it's challenging because it may, be the end of Hyatt as a brand, but two, it's going to be tough for another brand to justify picking them up inside the time frame, because you're bringing on assets that you're going to struggle with.
So, Ed, I'm going to push back on that for 1 second. At least you might be right in terms of as a brand. I'm not sure. I saw a fascinating statistic just this morning from Jan Freitag, where he talked about the fact that during 2008, 2009, this number shocked me. I did not see this coming at all. That during 2008, 2009, the hotel industry, and I don't remember if this was North America or if this was global, don't pin me on the number, only lost a total of 15,000 rooms.
Mm-hmm.
And his analysis was that, you know, if you think about it, the hospitality industry is two different businesses. You got the real estate side, you got the operations side. And on the real estate side, every time a hotel was in dire straits, there was some real estate investor willing to say, at a deep enough discount, I can make this profitable. And so the hotel didn't go away, just a different owner came in, snapped it up as a bargain, and, you know, and then did a different operation to turn it into something. So the hotels will survive in some
the buildings will.
Right, just under potentially
The
different.
premise of the brand network.
Yeah,
though,
fair enough.
I don't see a Marriott going, you know what? Hyatt's at a good price point right now. Let's buy the franchise. Because I don't see that. I see the franchise closing before it hits a price tag that a Marriott or a Hilton or an IHG will be willing to acquire it.
But maybe another VC will come in, though, because a lot of these are looking at 5-7 year returns, right? And I don't think any of us here, if we were betting people, would say, you know, given the current market conditions, it may take a year or two, but if I project 5 or 7 years from now, I think someone like Hyatt's going to be doing just fine. So,
yeah, maybe
if they can survive, I agree.
I hope that's true because I genuinely think they're a great brand.
Yeah, and if they can survive, I think that's true. But what makes a franchise? Now, Hyatt doesn't own many, if any, of their assets, right? They're straight up
these days.
Right. So, you know, so think about what you're buying. You're buying contracts and people then at that point. Well,
and brand equity. I mean, you're buying a brand, you're buying a platform, you're buying contracts, and you're buying people.
Well, they're mostly third-party tech. So the platform isn't going to be, you know, it's not going to be like Starwood, who had their own tech stack, right?
Sure.
The people thing is going to be an issue because if you're bleeding and you don't sell before you really have to cut to the bone, most of those people are going to go to other brands. So, you know, you're left with contracts and brand equity. You know, my concern is, and again, I'm just playing kind of the devil's advocate here. My concern is there going to be someone who thinks they are unique enough to be worth an investment when you're not getting the people potentially, and when you're not really buying tech, you're buying contracts and a brand?
I don't know. I'm looking at. One of the ways I look at, and I'd love Robert's point of view on this. I wish Robert because he probably has these numbers at his fingertips. I just did a quick Google.
He has it in his head.
Yeah, exactly. But a way you can look at the equity in a brand is in goodwill and in price to book versus price to earnings, right? Because that's the difference that the street is willing to pay above the actual underlying asset.
Sure.
And the goodwill is $750 million right now, right? As of the end of Q1 2020. You know, would you pick up Hyatt for $550 million? I might. You know, I mean,
I've not got it on me.
I would. I mean, listen, you know, I think you're in the 300s before an investor would touch it today. Now, 8 months from now, yes, when there is like actual light on the horizon, right? Yeah. And so, you know, sure, would I buy their $750 million in goodwill 8 months from now for $500 million? Absolutely, all day.
Yeah.
Today, no, it's $300 million. Just because of the risk.
And again, nobody should buy or sell.
No one should do. Quite honestly,
views expensive. Totally are.
You shouldn't buy lunch while you're watching this show because we may drive you to make poor decisions.
Masks from
Tim, anybody that has ever watched our show already knows. Just throw it with a little bit of salt. We're good. It's all right.
I will admit, I think you all know this. I actually started my career in digital in 1995, working for Charles Schwab. So there are deep, deep scars on that topic. Worked there all during the dot-com boom, and I always had to say, not that I'm giving any stock advice, not that you should be doing anything based on anything.
See, Tim, that's why you were having a hard time interrupting, because if you worked for E.F. Hutton, we'd all be like,
if I had something worth saying, you'd all be like.
All right, Lily, you had 2 articles, and I know we hit one with.
Hey, I would like to point out it's 12:55.
I was just going to say,
and this is
second
Lauren is talking about getting to our second article.
If anything, I want to be consistent. If anything, I want to be consistent.
That was amazing.
That is amazing.
That was
That is so good.
amazing.
Almost like
Lily, you had a second topic that you were bringing to the table for us. We might as well go right on you with the second topic.
Oh, for sure. No, I just thought it was nice. It's a very kind of concise update from Jan Freitag from STR, whatever you want to call it, about the kind of green shoots that we're seeing. So 10 million room nights, over 10 million room nights were sold last week, which is a 3 million room night improvement from the prior week. And basically, the first good news kind of that we've seen for a while. So I just wanted to bring that to their attention. I'm actually trying to put together a couple of success stories. I know I've heard about like the Omni in Corpus Christi when they reopened. They pretty much sold out all 475 rooms overnight. So just based on the demand for travel that we're starting to see, some of our properties that are opening up are seeing bookings, particularly on weekends, as we all kind of anticipated. 2 or 3 night weekend stays coming up, but even exceeding my expectations, because one of my properties is not opening up for a little over a month, and just yesterday they booked 10 room nights for the first weekend that they're open at the end of June. So I think that it's really just encouraging. We've had a lot of bad news for a long time, so wanted to put out a little bit of good news.
I mean, to be fair, you're saying we've had a lot of bad news. I've been giving good news for a couple of weeks now. As this data has been happening, I've been saying, hey, we're seeing bullishness in beach markets. We're seeing bullishness in nature markets. We're seeing hotels open at 60, 70% occupancy and quickly moving to sellouts. So, I mean, to be fair, we've been hearing good news. It's just you're hearing it from someone that you respect.
So what's interesting to me is how is thinking about the data that we're seeing and if it's anomalous or not, right? So I had a conversation this week with some guy in one of the big brands, and they're seeing super short booking windows, right? Super short booking windows. And his concern is that it's pent-up demand and it'll burn itself out.
Right.
And that, sort of in a month or so, everybody who's dying to go to the beach or who cares less about, social distancing or whatever will have gotten it out of their system, and they'll lose their job or their hours will get cut back because things aren't going as well as everyone hoped. And so the question is, how anomalous is this, right? And how sustainable is it? And I don't have the answer to it, but it's an interesting way to think about it.
I mean, here's the thing. It's both right. It's both right and wrong. Yes, the audience that is traveling today is a specific audience of people. And yes, we will burn through that audience. However, everyone's decision on when it's safe to do a new behavior is a personal decision. Right. So the question isn't whether or not we'll burn through this audience, because absolutely we will. It's how big is the audience behind it? The next
So how many waves are we going to see as everyone reaches whatever their comfort point is and is willing to stay in a hotel, to go to a whatever, wherever they want to go.
And based on a popular consumer sentiment study, you can actually track how people are moving into those different buckets over time. It's this company, I don't know if you've heard of it, it's Fuel Travel. They do this consumer sentiment study that is, the most statistically relevant one I've seen.
To Fuel Travel Love Fest.
It sounds like a scam, I think. It sounds like a scam company.
By the way,
I wouldn't trust them. I wouldn't trust them.
Number two, we should point out. Number
Number
two.
the number 2 user of Flip2, Fuel.
Well, now.
However, I mean, if you look at the behavior, those waves are moving, and people are moving. It's actually, I mean, and Stuart, you can talk to it, but it has looked like they've moved in lockstep. Like everyone's kind of moving down the funnel of when they're traveling, and not a lot of people appear to be sticking. Like I'm staying at the. No. I'm never going to travel. The groups seem to be moving. So I'll let you talk.
It's a bell curve, but it's shifting.
Right.
As things start to open. So to give you some context, and we have a lot of density and a lot of data in the Myrtle Beach market specifically. So I'll talk specifically about that, and we can extrapolate it. But those hotels were mandated to be shut by the local city. The state hadn't shut them down, but the local city did. And then on April 30th, the city changed the ordinance and said, okay, if you have bookings on the books from May 1st through May 15th, we'll allow them to stay. But then anything new being booked has to be after May 15th, which is today. So now all the hotels in the area are officially open. You can take new bookings, etc. On May 1st, when that announcement was made, we saw an immediate uptick in bookings across the board. And over 50% of the bookings were for May dates. Keeping in mind, you couldn't book from May 1st through May 14th. It was all May 15th. Now, as we've gotten closer to May 15th, we've seen that booking window shift. And now what we're predicting is over 17% of all bookings are going to be for the same day or the next day through the end of May. And we got properties that are all sitting now 60% plus occupied for the rest of the month. Plus, on top of that, where was I going with this? I've completely lost my train of thought. There was the big
moving bell curve.
So the moving bell curve is really interesting.
Yeah.
What we were seeing is the window was 80 days prior to May 1st. People were booking for June, July, August, September. September was actually the biggest because there was a lot of unknown. But as certainties come, as things are beginning to open up, and keep in mind our drive markets are North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, all varying degrees of opening, people's confidence is coming. But we're seeing it's still a bell curve, but it's a shifting bell curve towards the date. So I don't think we're going to see a pop that could happen. I think it's just going to be as people fall into that right mindset, the others are going to kind of fall out. We've gone, I think, 7 straight days now in the Myrtle Beach market where more bookings and revenue has been booked on a day-by-day basis than on the same day the previous year.
So which actually means you're making up for lost ground.
Right. Now, keep in mind the occupancy on the books is significantly lower, right? So we got a big hole to climb out of, but we're going to catch up. We're running some data now to try to project based on the current velocity when we'll catch up. But my guess is by probably early July at the latest, this market at least is going to be back on par for July, August, September.
And
maybe ahead for September
is going to be ahead. It looks like, barring any hurricane activity. Your September is stronger looking now than the last 3 previous years September position this time of year, because we've been looking at that data. But we're not just yes, we have a heavy data concentration in Myrtle Beach as well. But we have heavy data concentration in other markets. And we've been trying to see, are there similarities? What's different in these markets? What's happening in these markets? And, there are way more similarities in behavior in opening markets than there are dissimilar behaviors. And it has started with, as the market has neared the anticipated announcement date of opening back up, you all of a sudden started seeing pops September, August, July, June, up to and then once the date of opening is known, your booking window goes and it's volume, call volume and online volume, goes through the roof. So what's interesting about that is okay, so who was the August booker? Is that the phase that, is going to be ready in August, right? Like, are they already thinking ahead? Like, oh, I know, I'll let all these fools go through and do their thing early. I'll be an August person. Or is there a wave coming of last minute August that could potentially bring that peak up even stronger?
Yes, I believe actually I'm on board of that wagon where I believe there's a peak yet to be hit in that market, and a lot of that depends on the going forward into the next season education criteria, work criteria, job recovery criteria. If people know that they're walking back into a job, that they're coming off a furlough, or they kept their job and they're looking for a break, or if their kids can do schooling without having to go to school, or they are now going to permanently be able to work from home or wherever they may go to, there will be the recovery of the lost summer vacation mentality. And I think that's going to have a whole push and surge into going into the September, October, weather permitting, because we still have hurricane season for this.
Weather and a second phase of infection.
Infection, yes.
Yep.
Resurgence
Well,
of that.
I mean, here's the more concerning thing that's happening right now. So you look at a market like Orlando, or you look at a market like Myrtle Beach, which during peak seasons depends on international students to actually work
It's a real challenge.
to fill the demand. One of the crises that's going to come out of this in markets like Myrtle Beach and Orlando is a substantial worker shortage that it's a double hit. The hit number one are workers not wanting to come back because they're making more money on unemployment. That's a real issue. I'm hearing it more and more and more every day. But then crisis number two is the lack of international travelers that come for the summer and work. Those students that's going to be another huge challenge, to where you may sell out your normal August demand, but you may be doing it with 60% of your normal staffing level.
I would even add another third whammy to that, Ed, and that is the people that decided that this is not the career for them.
Yeah.
That they do industry abandonment. Like, you know what? I had to go find something else. I was a bartender. Now I'm an insurance agent. I'm actually stable. Money's there. I don't have to do what I did. I'm okay. And then, but there's a positive twist to it too. There is a density for restaurants as to whether or not they actually can create better efficiencies on how they provide service for the deliveries, pickups, less dense seating, and so forth. For those who are still looking at that distancing request, they may not have the requirements, but hotels, to your point, are still going to have the staff demand, and parks and things like this are still going to have the manpower, the cleaning crews and the operational crews. So it's a very little compensation for all the negatives.
In other markets, so the market up here, I live in Boston, so Cape Cod is one of those, big. So number one, lots of international workers. So lots of HB1 or HB2 visa workers coming over. So of course they can't get here if they can even get the visa. There are workers that are still on, unemployment, making money, and hotels haven't opened, right? So this is a market who hasn't opened. So what happens if the Cape opens up, I don't know, July 1? The summer is gone, right? The season is pretty much gone. I think the same could be said of the Jersey Shore, or any of those beach markets that won't open up until midway through the season.
Right.
I cannot imagine what just specifically Cape Cod hospitality is going to look like next year.
The city and places like that, yeah. Totally.
Well, I don't know. They say that they're going to be opening the Wildwood Boardwalk, and I already see, being that I have a lot of relatives up that way, a lot of chatter about how they plan to pack the bars immediately and order fish bowls and boardwalk fries. So it'll be interesting to see. And I think that really, right, Steve, I think that really it just is going to depend, because it's fascinating that I've decided to hold on to this little part-time job I got at Walmart, right? Like in the short term, because it's just fascinating to me to see a different perspective. So at Walmart, we have these beautiful one-way aisle signs out there, and please wear a mask and all of that. And I'll tell you what, the general population does not care.
Well, first of all, Walmart struggles.
No one is looking at it.
Walmart struggles to get the people of Walmart to wear pants. They're going to get them to wear a mask.
It's so disparate from, the luxury hotel industry down to the Walmart retail industry. But it's really interesting because still, and maybe I'm just automatically making a correlation I should not about the boardwalk, which immediately made me think of Walmart.
No, you're probably on the right direction.
But I'm just saying there are going to be these areas where there is a vast majority of the population who just does not care, and we're going to see a clash of these two cultures.
But there is going to be a challenge there. I mean, unemployment benefits run out at a certain point.
Right.
GDP runs out at a certain point. I'm sure you all saw the stat this week that of people who make less than $40,000 a year, 40% were laid off in April.
Right.
I mean, the recovery is going to be soft for a while until people are working because there's going to be an economic hit. And, luxury travelers are always going to travel as long as they feel secure because they're always going to have the money to do so. Maybe they take a shorter trip. Maybe they stay closer to home. Maybe they don't fly. I mean, things along those lines. But that's not going to be an issue. Folks in, 5-star, 4-star type product, not going to be the big problem. It's when you get to economy, it's when you get to things like that, how sustainable is this? To Stuart's thing about you seeing the bell curve move to the left, that's great, but what you probably aren't seeing, I don't think, is that the bell curve is getting larger, right? Because there's going to be a lot of people who aren't going to be able to travel. That's right.
Well, I mean, and again, that's going to depend on government policy because the House is already presenting the idea of extending the unemployment to January, which, my gosh, will that be really difficult for this industry? Because here's the thing, if I'm a low wage worker in a market that I know is going to hit a crisis, and I'm making more money right now than I've ever made on unemployment, and I know generally I can be a bartender here or a bartender there or a bartender there, and as long as I've been a bartender, I'm going to get hired when I'm ready to work. Do you hold out until there's desperation and the pay goes up?
Sure.
And, so these are things revenue managers need to have in their mind is their realistic staffing levels as they hit these peak demand periods is you may need to take an approach of artificially lowering your occupancy through rate, knowing that if you get to above a certain threshold of occupancy, the guest satisfaction is going to plummet because of the lack of staff that you have.
Right. Or do you start making, operational changes? For example, I think there's an opportunity in the current climate to not offer daily housekeeping. Does that become an add-on service that people pay for? Do they centralize their laundry facilities? There's creative things you can do to minimize the number of staff you need. And a lot of our clients are already kind of working towards that. I really think, I was listening to Glenn Housen's podcast earlier in the week, and they had an interesting conversation about does this turn into the unbundling of the hotel? We talked a lot about attribute-based selling in the past and all been kind of negative towards it, but is this the catalyst that does lead us down that path? Because, people may have to do it just because of the amount of employees that they can.
We've already seen what the brand's initiatives are, not only in changing the cleaning policy, there was an article for that, but also their food service policies and everything else as to reconditioning the delivery process and the containments and so forth. And to your point, Stuart, the frequency of the clean, that rooms won't be cleaned. You're taking up, Val, take care.
Yeah, gotta go. Sorry.
If you want to know more about you quick, because we did Norone, tell them about Norone and how to get a hold of you.
Norone.com, and I'm Valen Perini at just about every social media you can figure out.
Val, thanks for jumping in.
TikTok.
See you, Valen.
Bye.
But they're talking about how they're changing the methodologies in all aspects, where they might not, the room won't get cleaned while somebody's still in it, or if for long-term stays, or that the laundry is brought to the room, and the laundry is left outside the room. And that they may not actually service the room until after the guest is checked out.
The guest may not want them to. Frankly, you may want them.
Right, that's an opportunity, right?
Some of that we're just going to have to see how.
Throw your towels on the floor for leave on the rail. Go agreement how they then instigated that too. Yeah.
Right.
But I still want the chocolate. So, yeah.
No, you can't have your chocolate idiot too. No.
I really don't want anyone with that touching a piece of chocolate and putting it on my bed right now.
Well, no. So
Well, no, that's okay. I just put a little Purell on it, and then I have it. And then it goes the virus from the inside out.
Everywhere I stay, it's already full wrapped, the chocolate. It doesn't touch somebody else. I mean, where? Yeah, I don't know. I mean, Europe, it's.
Tim, were you saying that you were saying goodbye? Or you're just saying happy thoughts?
I was saying happy thoughts. I actually do have to leave in about 5 minutes, but
Well, then you get to pick the last one of the last topics that we have. Anything off the list of Robert, or was there something that was burning for you?
I actually wanted to go back to Lily's for 1 second with the numbers from SDR. You know, the one thing that I thought was positive in there that we also should be looking to is the fact that we've hit 30% occupancy on average for the first time in a while, which creates, 30% is not break even for many places, but it brings in a whole new tranche of folks for whom it is break even, right?
Right.
That's something that's really encouraging too, is that we're going to get, to a place where we're starting to get towards break even numbers. I realize they tend to be higher for a lot of folks, but I thought that was a really positive sign, and the fact that we went to 4 straight weeks of the numbers going up. So, I think as we said earlier, so much of this is going to come back to we're going to have to see how guests behave, and we're going to have to see what guests will accommodate and respond appropriately. The one reason, since Stuart brought up the point about attribute-based selling, the one reason that I've always been kind of negative about it is that I think it creates an environment where you're allowing guests to shop the specific amenity you're offering or the specific service you're offering relative to an Uber Eats or relative to a, some other entrant into the marketplace who can sell that and perhaps operationalize it at a better cost structure at a better price and a better service potentially. So we'll see how that changes, but does this create opportunities for new types of hospitality companies? I'm thinking Travis Kalanick's Cloud Kitchens, right? If you're familiar with this, which is the restaurantless restaurant. It's a kitchen that simply brings food to you that's prepped and all that kind of stuff. Do we create opportunities for new entrants in a way that further commoditizes the room product separate from all the other amenities that folks get when they're in market? And that's something I'd be conscious and cautious about.
Yeah, very true. There was 2 other deep thought. Vic mentioned he's been living in a hotel already, and he's doing the same thing where it's at X number of days between changing the beds and the limits and so forth. The other 2 aspects I think about this is the reversal of the trend of having large common spaces for people to engage and interact. That has to be rethought. Then the brands that are heavy into that, what are they going to do? Because they're going to have to literally thin the herd in their space usage. And then the other is, you almost feel sorry for middle management in our industry because they're going to be the last to come back to anything. The first inquiry of anybody coming back into it is the tried and true housekeepers, the tried and true engineers, the tried and true front desk, and middle management people that were good at what they did, but it was very much about middle management. Do they descend into a more applicable role that is a easier hire, or do they hold out to wait for the market to come back to what they used to do? Or do they try to have to shift out? And I think that's where we're going to lose a lot of talent from the industry, that those people have to make a decision sooner rather than later as to, I got to go find something. I can't wait for the company to want to hire back a middle management role that I had. I got to make some money. Either I step down and stay in the industry, or I step out of the industry and turn into something else. So,
well, we've already been seeing that. I know people, certainly in the digital marketing world, who have been hospitality specific, that they've left, they've gone. They're off doing other things now because there's transferable skills. Digital marketing is digital marketing. It doesn't matter what industry you're in. We all use Google, Facebook. It's the same platform. We use it differently, yes, absolutely. But it's still the same platform. And these people, if they're good and they're talented, and there's a hell of a lot of good talented people in the industry, they are living.
Yeah, no, it's very, very true. And then it goes back to the services that are, all of us, what we do in the service to the industry. We were in a nice position that we're able to fill the voids that were created from people needing somebody that didn't still know how to screw in a light bulb because they had to let their team go that did it, and they had to let go of the relationship that did it for them or something. But as that all comes back, how do we change what we offer as a service profile? I mean, I'm actually thinking that in the future tense, there might be a whole price shift that goes on because it's either going to go down because there's too much of everybody doing something, or it's going to go way up because there's few of us doing as well as we did. And I really don't know which way that's going to go. It's a question mark for me as to whether or not there's going to be enough of us to handle the demand, or if there's too much of us to figure that we have to realign how we're actually charging for what we do.
Maybe you'll have to diversify as well, Lauren. So you'll have to do digital marketing and laundry.
Ooh.
Hotel digital marketing and laundry service.
Yeah.
Reminds me of one of my all-time favorite jokes. Now, this is going to truly be a dad joke, but Bob Newhart, made albums back in the 60s that I loved when I was a kid. They were my dad's albums, and they were very funny. And he had one about the Mrs. Grace L. Ferguson Airline and Storm Door Company. With that, by the way, it is. I've got a 150, and I've got something to go.
Yeah, I have to leave as well.
We got a Boop and a Rotwell. We can hit either one of those. Before you go, Tim, where can they know more about you, your podcast, and all the amazing things that you do?
TimPeter.com. By the way, speaking of the podcast, Griffin, thank you so much for the shout out on LinkedIn the other day. That was very kind of you. That was very nice of you. So
absolutely. No, it was great.
Thank you. You can find me at TimPeter.com, and I am Tim Peter on most social media except for some reason, Twitter, where I am TC Peter. So, and I won't be here next week. We're actually taking a Memorial Day holiday, mostly just walking around in like the park and stuff like that, but taking a day off. I was actually scheduled for some vacation right when this all blew up. That then also blew up. So there's a mental health day in my future.
Yeah, we all been in private conversation that we're probably working more now than we've ever had to work before when all this actually happened. It's been crazy. So yeah,
so that. But see you all in 2 weeks. Stay well, stay healthy, and cheers. Cheers.
Side of the family drop too, guys.
Likewise.
Well, in that case, Mr. Stewart, since you have the podcast of the award-winning podcast,
the Gold Adrian award-winning podcast. Fueltravel.com/podcast is where you can find that, and fueltravel.com is where you'll find all the other stuff, including the studies we're putting out. We just fielded the 4th version of our sentiment study yesterday, so we're still collecting data, but we'll compile that, and we'll be actually talking about it next week on Lily's podcast. We're going to be recording an episode of that, and then another crossover. Ed is going to be on the podcast, the Fuel podcast that we're recording today, so that'll be out sometime this weekend. So Griffin's already been on there. Lauren's already been on there. Lily's already been on there. Amazing. It's one big happy family. Yeah. Yeah, Ed, you're the last one, buddy.
Are we going to get regular, Twitter and Facebook updates on the position of this epic Flip2 race?
I'll now keep you all posted as to what's happening in the competition between what's currently now Tim and Stuart, and soon to have a
late entrant.
A late
I
entrant.
have some evil plans to take over the universe. Techniques and tools yet hitherto never found before.
So I texted Casty a second ago and asked her how many we'd gained since the show started. And unfortunately, Flip2 doesn't allow us to look by date stamps, so she's not sure. But we definitely added a handful in the
Since
last hour.
This morning, you've added 130 new submissions. Since the email, you've added, what did you add? You added 80 since the email went out, which was right before the show anyways.
And since the show, you've lost 100.
Yeah, that's the problem. You can just go in the database and change the numbers.
You've added 10. You've added 10 since the show.
Okay, that's not bad. All right.
10 more.
And yeah, I'll be here next week. So see everybody next week.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
See you guys. Bye.
So
I gotta go.
I have to go.
Okay, so hey, I tell you what, I'm going to put the links in the link notes so everybody can see the Boop and the Rotwell, which is actually kind of funny. The Rotwell is kind of interesting as a micro as to what travel looks like for long distance travel right now. I'll just throw it into the show notes. But Mr. Griffin, sir, thank you first off for joining us. I sincerely appreciate it anytime we get the chance to have you pop in. But if they want to know more about Mr. Griffin and the amazing Screen Pilot and everything else, what is it and where is it they can go?
Sure. So screenpilot.com. Check out our COVID-19 hub. Obviously, it's expansive of so many different aspects at this point, from the data dives into the different markets to different inspiration that we're seeing around the industry. So take a dive into whatever avenue you're looking for that day, but screenpilot.com. Then find us on all social media as well.
No, excellent content, by the way. Yesterday I literally was on the site reading through some stuff that you had just put up. So very cool stuff. Thank you.
Really appreciate it. And always great joining y'all. I'll be around next week most likely. So
oh, cool. Good.
Cheers.
Mr. Tristan, what is it that you are doing, sir, way across the pond?
Way across the pond. Well, we're kind of straddling both sides of the pond at the moment. We've got many things on the go, but we're contactable. When I say we're, that's me and Ben. Sometimes people don't realize we are separate people. We're not one person called Ben and Tris. It is two people. But you can get myself at tris.hayward at 3and6.agency. And I'm also on LinkedIn and various other social media. LinkedIn's probably the biggest one for me. 3and6.agency as the website. That's due to be coming up this week. So watch this space. There will be a website. We're working on it furiously in the background.
I'll be putting your email and contact information in the show notes for everyone as well, too. As with everyone's, I'm now putting that as an added component to the page. It's silly that I've never done that before, that everybody's contact. I mean, by name you're on there, but not the contact. It's like, duh. 249 shows to figure that one out.
Always
your client list just reduced 10%.
On the uptake. Miss Lily, where is it they can find you and what you do with ThinkUp Enterprises as well as TCRM services?
You're getting really good at that, by the way. So you can find us at www.tcrmservices.com for all things revenue management, and also thinkupenterprises.com for all things revenue management assessments, system audits, and technology selection. And as well, on the ThinkUp Enterprises website, you can find our podcast where we're releasing timely information that helps with your planning of the industry. I did a little shameless self-promotion in the chat. You can calculate your break-even point using our exercise in episode 1 if you don't know how to do that already. And finally, I strongly encourage you to follow our company pages on LinkedIn as quickly as possible, because we are getting ready to do a 4-week kind of Amazon Prime Day style blast of different things using some of our funding from the government. Thank you, government, to get some really affordable things out to hotels in a short order.
And congratulations. I think last time I looked at your podcast metrics, you have doubled your audience in the past week.
Excellent.
It is a growing audience substantially. So congratulations to that end. And Mr. Ed, where is it that people can find you, since you were so good at starting the show with manipulating the entire conversation around Flip2? Not that anything's left over to talk about, but if there is anything, where could they find it?
You can find out more about Flip2 by going to flip.to. You can find me on social media, Edward St. Onge. And if you're interested in hearing me talk about what I think you can do to grow your demand as you head into your recovery planning, I am doing a presentation on Tuesday for HSMAI Ontario and British Columbia. And that is Tuesday at 1:30 Eastern time. You can sign up online through either of the LinkedIn pages for either the HSMAI Ontario chapter or the HSMAI British Columbia chapter, where I will be going over how consumer behavior has shifted during the time of COVID, what sentiment is prevailing in consumer behavior, both in North America as a whole, but I'm also going to specifically talk about Canadian travelers in this. And then what can you be doing right now to nurture your audiences in a tasteful and meaningful way to help yourself recover faster.
And I'm going to give a shameless plug to Corey Falter. If you can, go to LinkedIn to find the Quarantini.
Yes.
It's a daily mixer.
Weekly mixer.
Right. We do the daily. He does a weekly
on Friday.
Today at 4:30.
4 o'clock.
Well, I have 4:30 on my calendar. I was going to be late because I'm hosting it today. Good
it's
God,
4 o'clock, Lauren. It's 4 to 5 o'clock.
Hey, take it away.
you can go to Lore Agency on LinkedIn, and you will see that they've been hosting a weekly cocktail mixer for marketing specific side of the hospitality. It's grown into quite a fun group of people that's gotten bigger. And he nominates someone every week to run the show. And this week, Lauren is running the show with a fun game that I helped him develop. So you can get the Zoom information by going to LinkedIn for Lore Agency, and please feel free to join. We'd love to see your smiling faces, and you'll get to see what Lauren's idea of a fun game is.
It's a drinking game. Chris, you were my inspiration. You were my inspiration. Is like, what would Tris like to do? I know,
drinking game.
Drinking game.
And Lauren Gray, if people want to learn what you do beyond a daily lunch event and a weekly world-renowned video show, where can they find out more about you?
Well, I'm glad you asked. Actually, for this and all previous 248 episodes of This Week in Hospitality Marketing, you can go to hospitalitydigitalmarketing.com/live. There you'll see the well-curated list that Robert gives us that we hardly touched every week. Plus also to any of the show notes that were contributed to by Miss Lily. And now all the contact information of all those that were co-hosts with us. So if you didn't catch what we said, how to find us, you can simply go there and find the links to all the emails and social media for everybody that was a host of the show with us this week. We do apologize that Richard, and we do actually, I'm going to reach out to him. I think from everything I've talked with him about, I don't think he intended to miss the show. So I'm really concerned that something may have happened. You know, you always worry the worst in that sense to it, because I was really excited to see it. And if we can, we'll try to get Richard from Muse back on, because it is a platform that we were very interested and excited to learn more about. And if Richard hears this and whatever, we'll keep talking to him to try to get him back onto the show for that. So thank you, everyone that participated with us today. And of course, show number 250, bing, ding, change the number, next Friday, 11:30 Eastern. And of course, I do the podcast recap of the show, which is Hospitality Marketing, the podcast. You can just simply talk to your talking machines and it'll come back up. Alexa, Siri, or Google Assistant. You just have to say, hey, play Hospitality Marketing Podcast. And Miss Lily's, you can do the same thing. I set you up for that as well. So you can go to the talking machines and they will go over and play the podcast. So with that in mind, thank you, everyone, and look forward to seeing everyone next Friday, 11:30 Eastern. Till then, bye, everyone.